Okay, hello everybody. I'm not sure if you can already hear me. Let's see. Um, we're not so many people yet. Maybe um, the sun is shining too much. I think I am live both on Zoom and on YouTube, and it would be really cool if for both of these somebody could simply confirm in the chat whether it works, whether you can hear me. So just write something like hello, hey, something like that, and then we'll see if that works or if it doesn't. Um, yeah, maybe I could just get this little feedback, and then basically I'm open for your questions here. So any question you might have about learning Norwegian, about my Norwegian courses, about the Norwegian language in general, about learning strategies, about pronunciation, about grammar, a specific question, more general question, doesn't really matter. Feel free to just share them. If you're on YouTube, then please do that in the chat, and on Zoom. There are not so many people here, so I guess we can maybe just do it by unmuting microphones or by raising your hand. So if you're on Zoom, you can raise your hand by just using this symbol at the bottom of the screen, or you can also just put a question in the chat. Yeah, I can see that Lord Assassin is in Bratislava. Okay, you can hear me. Kyle can hear me. I guess that's what the thumbs up means, so that's really good. Yeah, I don't have so much to say from my side now. I guess the best thing is if you can just start typing a question in the chat. Or if you're on Zoom, then simply raise your hand to that. Otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube and you wonder how you can actually get into the Zoom room, I think for this time it's a little bit difficult, but for my next Q&A, it might be a bit easier, and you just have to subscribe to my newsletter. So you can do that on my website, scapago.eu. If you go to the first page, you will basically see the opportunity to go into the newsletter, to subscribe to it, and yeah, then basically you'll get an invitation to the Zoom room, and the Zoom room is of course cool because then we can talk one-on-one. Unfortunately, on YouTube, that's not really possible. Okay, so we have a really difficult question at the at the beginning. Um, and it's about the difference in pronunciation between two Norwegian words that are written exactly in the same word, and not written. They are written in a way that you would think they sound exactly the same, and in most dialects, actually, they do. But in some dialects, there is a difference in the so-called tonem. So what is that? So you might have heard, if you heard somebody speak in Oslo dialect, then you might have heard that they have the singing intonation in the language. They will say something like høre. Yeah, so the voice goes down and then up. Or they will say something like betale. So the voice is on the same level for every syllable. Okay. That is what is the so-called tonem in Norwegian. And there are very few words where there is a difference in meaning between the two. To be honest, as a student for Norwegian, I would not focus on the difference in meaning between them. Because it's really just, I always see the same 5 or 6 examples, and it's always clear by the context which of the two you're talking about. Yeah, so therefore I don't think it's really easy to say. And Norwegians themselves sometimes mix them up. So even native speakers, sometimes they're not sure which of the two is it actually, especially if they are from a dialect that is not so close to Oslo. So yeah, basically um, that is the background about these two names. I'm not sure if I explained that yeah, in an understandable way. Lord Assassin, maybe you can just type in the chat if that has been helpful. Kyle is asking, what method do you recommend to bridge the gap between common spoken Norwegian and bokmål? So ironically, so for those of you who are just beginning with Norwegian, maybe you might know that there are two written standards for the Norwegian language, bokmål and nynorsk. They are quite similar, but there's historical reasons why that is the case. So you can write Norwegian in two different ways. Fortunately, nowadays, 90% of the population use bokmål, so you don't really need to learn nynorsk. But sometimes it can help to understand a bit of nynorsk passively, because many dialects use words and expressions or changes in, for example, how words are formed that are closer to nynorsk than to bokmål. So if you have a little bit of passive knowledge of nynorsk, then this will be easier for you, especially if you're met with a dialect that is not so common in the area where you speak, because obviously Norwegians move around. So you have the dialect that is spoken in your area where you live in Norway, if you live in Norway, but then you will meet people from other parts of Norway and they speak in a different dialect. And for that reason, I think that's a bit helpful. I do that actually at the A2, B1 level in my Norwegian courses, that I introduce a little bit of nynorsk. So you have a passive knowledge of nynorsk. That's one thing that I guess is a bit helpful. The other thing is, I would say, by trying to adapt at least one dialect, and that is the one that you have the most connection with if you live in a particular area in Norway, then I guess that's the one that you should the one that you should choose. And from then on, it might be a good idea also to systematically try to understand what are the main differences between the dialects. And unfortunately, there are not so many resources out there for it. I am planning to create more resources for that. Unfortunately, as I said, there is not so much out there, but I'm going to share something in the chat. Let me see if that works. Yeah, I think it's called Nordavind og Sola. It's a map of Norway, and you have black dots on it. And on you can click on the dots, and you can hear the same story told by people from different areas in Norway. And you can hear what is the difference, and you have transcripts, and you will get a bit of an idea of what the different dialects in Norway are about. Cool. Lord Assassin says, I understand that it's not that important. I was just curious. Thank you for your explanation. Yes. So that's the thing about tonem. Of course, we can debate a little bit whether it is, whether you should study these tonems, but I'll give you one short rule here, maybe that you might find interesting. If you have a two-syllable word that ends in e, like most verbs, it's tonem to. It means the one that in Oslo will fall on the first syllable, go up on the second one. So it's høre. Yeah. That is the general, that's a general rule. Yeah, Kyle is asking, what is the website where we can hear the different dialects? It should be the one in the link that you see right above your message. I'm not sure if that works. It's hf.ntnu and so on, blah, blah, blah. That's where you would find that. So maybe you can just quickly ask in the chat if or you can just quickly put in the chat whether that is readable for you, applicable for you. Cool. I don't have any questions yet on Zoom, so for those who just joined us, maybe feel free to ask any question. Just put it in the chat, and of course, in Zoom we're so few people that we can even unmute the microphone. Yeah, that's basically what we can do. Kyle says, so there is an issue seeing this link. I'm not really sure why that doesn't work. But maybe before there are more issues of this kind, you can always send me an email if you want, and then get any question answered that we couldn't cover here. Or if something like that happens, that, for example, we cannot for some reason see the link that I'm sharing, just send me an email. I'm sharing my email address here. It's info@scapago.eu. We'll try to share that in the screen. Maybe that works. Info@scapago.eu. Yeah, maybe that works a bit better. Could you please also explain why is it in Norwegian that you have to say hva som står her, if I'm not mistaken, and not hva skrevet her, hva skrevet her? You would have to say, but it would also have to be som, so you would also have to add the som. So a little bit of theory about this som. Som can either be the subject or the object in the subordinate clause where it is standing. If you haven't learned about subordinate clauses yet, then this is not so important at this level, but like from A2 around, you will hear about subordinate clauses. So when you have subordinate clause starting with som, then som is either the subject or it's the object. If it is the subject, then it cannot be dropped, because every Norwegian sentence has to have a subject. And if som is the subject, then som is the subject. So, for example, if you say something like jeg vet ikke hva som står her, then the hva som together is actually the subject of the subordinate clause. Okay. Soterios is asking, hva dine favorittlæringsressurser for B1, B2 annet enn mysteriet om Nils? For eksempel oppdaget jeg nettopp tegneserien Nemi. I personally, okay, I will answer this one in Norwegian, but I will translate it shortly to English for those of you who don't understand. Jeg ville egentlig anbefalt at du begynner å lese originallitteratur på norsk. Det vil si at du kanskje leser norske aviser, kanskje begynner å høre på norske podcaster, men det må være noe som er enkelt, og som du er interessert i. En ting jeg synes er veldig fin er klartale. Jeg vet ikke om du kjenner klartale. Det er en ressurs som har, altså det er på en måte en avis som har enkle artikler. En annen ting er Peppa Gris, det er Peppa Pig på norsk. Så det er noe som er ganske greit på, ja, på nivå A2, B1 opp til B2, slik at det, ja, der du hører litt rett og slett enkel norsk. Og utover det så synes jeg som sagt at du kan begynne å lese enkle bøker. Altså i Mysteriet om Nils anbefaler jeg et par bøker. Jeg anbefaler for eksempel Pakkis. Så det er noe du burde prøve på dette nivået. Okay, so the question was about resources I recommend on level B1, B2, apart from my own Norwegian course. And I would say you should start reading or listening to original material, but ideally something that is simple, like Peppa Pig, something I love to recommend, or simple books that I also write about in my own textbook, like, for example, Pakkis. That's something that could help. Or Klart Tale, which is a cool, yeah, it's a sort of new online newspaper, but in simple language. Okay, we have a question on Zoom. I'm wondering what your experience with dialects is and how well you're able to understand Norwegians in different regions. So at the beginning, it was a bit of a nightmare, I have to say, because I learned only something like Eastern Norwegian, Oslo standard, like most people, and then I moved to Tromsø, and I struggled, but I read a lot about this dialect, and then of course I managed to understand this dialect very well. But but it took me time to also understand other dialects. I would claim that I understand all the dialects at the coast. I struggle sometimes with dialects in the country, like in the mountains somewhere, Lom, Dovre. But it's not like native speakers don't. So sometimes they also struggle understanding people, like from a remote village somewhere in the mountains. It can be really hard. And then people have to talk a little bit slower and use a bit different expressions to be understood. Um, do you think it's also important for non-natives to master pitch accent when speaking Norwegian? That's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, actually, recently, and I would say it depends a bit on the dialect you're trying to speak. I would say if you want to speak Oslo dialect and you ignore the pitch accent completely, then it's not very good because you will not sound naturally. On the other hand, you can learn it mostly by imitating. Like I think for most people, learning the intonation of a language is easiest by imitating other people. Studying it systematically, I think, can be quite hard, although there are pronunciation courses out there that do it. Mm, for for dialects that are at the West Coast, I think it's much less relevant because the pitch accent are not so strong. So even native speakers of these regions, they sometimes mix up the pitch accents. And therefore, I would say it's not so important. But if you're in Oslo, then yeah, maybe some energy should be dedicated to it. And I have to admit that I have done way too little for that. So I hope to expand on that topic also in the future. Um, which dialect is hard to understand for you? Yeah, as I mentioned, the ones in the country, the remote villages somewhere in the mountains, I have problems. Um, okay, Lord Assassin asks, I don't care if it's too complicated. I will take a look into and learn whatever you're talking about. I just hope this is being recorded. Yes, this is being recorded. I'm not sure if you're talking about the sum, I guess. If you want to know, I think it's in chapter 18 or 19 in my Norwegian course. There's a very deep explanation on it. Julia says, I find Norwegian sounds so cute. I feel like those who spoke Norwegian are happy all the time. Yeah, I guess that depends also a little bit on the dialect. So the intonation of Norwegian is very, very different depending on the different dialects. Cool. Hi, Jack by Jack says, har du noen forslag til ressurser for en som kan bokmål og har lyst til å lære seg nynorsk? Nei, faktisk dessverre har jeg ikke det, og jeg har fått forespørsler om det, at vi burde ha en nynorsk utgave av Mysteriet om Nils. Kanskje det kommer, jeg vet ikke, neste år, men akkurat nå så har jeg det dessverre ikke. Og akkurat nå så er jeg ikke, altså jeg kjenner ikke noen gode ressurser for å lære seg nynorsk. Bortsett fra ressurser selvfølgelig for norske elever. Altså hvis du bare går i bokhandelen i Norge, så har du jo masse lærebøker for norsk som, altså folk som har norsk som førstespråk. Og de må jo da bare lære seg nynorsk også som, nesten som et fremmedspråk. Så der har du noe materiale. So the question was whether I have recommendations for somebody who knows how to write bokmål, how to learn nynorsk. But to be honest, I'm not aware of any good resources except the ones that are textbooks for Norwegian school children. And yeah, that's basically the only thing I could potentially recommend. Otherwise, we are thinking of making a nynorsk edition of The Mystery of Niels for those who want to learn nynorsk, but I'm not sure if and when we can do that. The next question, by the way, I don't have so many questions on Zoom. Don't be shy, guys, on Zoom. I'm not ignoring you. Feel free to type in Zain. Hvordan kan jeg forbedre min skriving på B1, B2-nivå? Ok. Altså, på dette nivået synes jeg at det er veldig viktig at du får ganske altså mange anledninger til å trene grammatikken. For det finnes noe som for eksempel håndbok i grammatikk og språkbruk, og de har masse gratisoppgaver. Jeg kan også dele dem i chatten. Skal vi se her på YouTube og her på Zoom. Utover det er det kanskje lurt å få tilbakemelding, altså skrive tekster og ha en lærer eller noen som har norsk som morsmål, norske venner, og rette tekstene dine, eller gi deg tilbakemelding. Bare si, ok, dette er bra, dette er ikke så bra, dette skriver vi egentlig ikke. Og det tredje er at du burde lese mye. Altså, når vi leser mye, så blir vi også bedre når vi ønsker å skrive. Ok. So writing, the question was, how can I improve my written Norwegian when I'm already at B1 level or beyond? Then I recommend that at this level, first of all, practice grammar. It gets more and more important at that level, much more than on the A1, A2 level. Secondly, you might get feedback. You might want to get feedback either from a teacher or from another native speaker. And the third one is read a lot. Reading a lot helps you also improve your writing skills, obviously. Okay, Lord Assassin says, probably you get this question quite often, but since you speak fluent Norwegian, do you struggle with understanding Swedes? No, understanding Swedes is super simple. So I regularly have conversations with friends in Swedish Norwegian, meaning they speak Swedish, I speak Norwegian, and that works perfectly well. There's absolutely no problem with that. Danish is a bit more tricky. So when I speak to people in Denmark, they understand everything I say. But then if they answer a bit fast and not articulating very well, then I might have trouble understanding. So I cannot also, like, if I want to follow a debate on Danish television, then I can fall off the wagon, I think you call it in English. That can be a little bit tricky, to be honest. So yeah, so that's basically very easy, and a big advantage, I would say, of learning Norwegian, that you get two languages for free. You can read Danish without any problems, and you can understand spoken Swedish without any problems, and you would even read Swedish. I can read Swedish. It's not it's like maybe a little bit more cumbersome than reading Danish, but it's not difficult. So I read books in Swedish also. So that's really cool about the Scandinavian languages, I have to say. At the beginning, when I moved to Tromsø, I was always, when people talk to me in Swedish, I was always, what's that weird dialect? I can't really pinpoint where they are from. And then I realized, okay, it's Swedish. So that's really quite close. So yeah, it's quite great. Kyle saying, really enjoying your course and Mystery of Niels 1. Do you have any other resources you recommend to specifically practice speaking and listening to speech for those of us who don't live in Norway yet? Yeah, okay, that's always a challenge, obviously. One thing that is completely underrated is speaking to yourself. I tell that basically also to people who are afraid of speaking because it's a great way to get started to overcome that fear. You talk to yourself, or you talk to your teddy bear, as I keep saying. So you lock yourself up in the room and you talk about a topic that you find interesting, like or that you is just relevant. Like, many things in small talk are very predictable. If people ask you why are you learning Norwegian, well, you will always give the same answer, more or less. If people ask you about your job, you will always give the same answer, more or less. So it's quite predictable and it's quite easy to get prepared for that. So you can practice this. You don't have to practice it by heart, but basically what you're going to say, you can practice it. You can do that a number of times and you will get better. So that's definitely something I would do. Maybe Kyle, so I can be a bit more specific, maybe you can also tell me what is your level. Just put it in the chat. Um, Another thing is that we do a language cafe every Sunday at 8 o'clock Norwegian time. And you can meet people of different levels from A1 to B2. They usually go in, we do it on Zoom, and people go in different breakout rooms, and then in the breakout rooms, they can practice with people who are at the same level. So that's also quite cool, especially if you get started, because you don't want to speak to a native speaker who doesn't know what you find difficult and what you don't find difficult. Yeah, I guess that's the most important things I would suggest. If you can afford it, then maybe hiring a private tutor can be a good idea. But of course, that's not for everybody, and that's not feasible for everybody. So therefore, yeah, I guess the language cafe that we do, it's free. Anybody can come. And otherwise, talking to yourself, as I said, is much underrated. If you decide to join a course, whether it's an online course or whether it's a course in a school, then I would also make sure that the focus should be on the conversation and or on the pronunciation, these two things, because everything else you can do by yourself. It's not necessary to have someone explain the grammar. Okay, maybe if you have a question you want to ask a teacher to explain you something particular, but you can study grammar by yourself. But in a course, they should ideally focus on conversation and pronunciation. Cool. Jack by Chuck says, jeg hadde kjøpt Nils på nynorsk med en gang. Ok, cool. Yeah, you can say both. Du kan si jeg ville kjøpt Nils, eller jeg hadde kjøpt Nils. Det er det samme. Det er helt fint. Eon is saying, I'm watching, oh, sorry, Kyle, going back to you. I'm at level A2 for reading, closer to A1 for speaking. Yes, okay. Is the link for the language cafe on your website? Yes, it is. And I will see. I'm not sure if that works with the chat here. I'm not sure why I cannot share stuff in the chat. But I will try again and maybe you can find it there. So I basically, yeah, I've just shared it in the chat. Maybe you can tell me there if you can click on it. And if not, send me an email. For those who joined later, I was sharing my email address here. It's here, info@scapago.eu. Send me an email and I can send you anything that you want to, yeah, that you want to know, or the link you didn't get. Okay, I have a question in Zoom. Have you learned any Danish? No, I haven't. I've never studied Danish formally. So no, but it's really to read Danish, it's absolutely not necessary. because Danish is so close to bokmål that sometimes you have to read a sentence or two to even understand that it's Danish and not bokmål. So Danish to me is like Norwegian with typos. It's very easy. I'm watching the TV show Side om Side to learn Norwegian, and I find Norwegian comedy kind of awkward or dry. What do you think? Is it a fair representation of your sense of humor in general? Well, I guess it's something very personal. I mean, there are quite, I would say there are quite funny Norwegian humorists, but but yeah, of course, it's up to your personal taste. So if you don't like it, then I would say watch something else. Soterios is asking favoritt norskspråklig musikk. Jeg elsker nummer 4, Valkyrien All Stars. I like Kaisers Orchestra quite a lot. I find them quite funny and quite weird. I like weird stuff. So I would say that's my number one when it comes to contemporary or like modern music. What are the best things to do in Norway for the first time visiting? Oh, maybe Julia, you can specify that. Norway is a huge country, and there are so many different things to do, and it depends really if you want to go to nature, if you want to have some more cultural experiences, and what kind of nature you like, if you like boating or fishing or hiking, or so there's really so many different things to do. So that's um, a bit difficult to say. Lord Assassin says one more question. Why am I the only one who hit the like button? I don't know. Guys, hit the like button. I don't know. Eon, a more political question, but what's the current sentiment on Norway joining the EU, and do you think it will happen in the near future? To be honest, I don't think it will happen in the near future. I mean, the EU has had a couple of crises in the last years, so I don't think Norwegians are too keen on joining the EU right now, and then becoming maybe a little bit absorbed in the mess. That's not what people really want. Okay, let me check. Any more questions in the Zoom? By the way, guys, in the Zoom, of course, you can also ask a question by unmuting yourself if you want. You can raise your hand and then I can unmute you and we can talk like one-on-one. Andy says, I have two questions. Enige å være enig om. Is å enig ever used alone as a verb? I've never heard a verb enig, but let me check in the Norwegian dictionary. No, there's no such thing as enig as a verb. So enig is always an adjective. Maybe if you read it somewhere, maybe that was a play of words. Like we do that we make a verb out of an adjective that doesn't really exist, and we just want to make a joke or use that as a figure of speech. But basically that's not really possible. Yeah, I don't know where you saw it. Maybe it was in an article or something. And some journalist just did it or just wrote that for making fun. Of course, we can do that, but otherwise we don't really do it. Cool. There are no questions on YouTube right now. I don't know if you guys ran out of questions. It's a little bit quiet today. I guess it's summer holidays. People are traveling. People are at the beach and not learning Norwegian. That's also natural. It's also understandable. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys can still put in the chat though in YouTube if you can even click on the links that I had for you. Maybe that's not possible. So that would be interesting for me to know. Cool. We have a question in Zoom now. I get confused with how to pronounce U and Ö. Okay, that's a bit of a complicated question because These are two really, really different sounds. Even though we write them with the same letter, it's like the O, and then either we put this line through it and we have the Ö, or we don't put the line through it and then we have the U. And that makes it maybe, or that maybe gives people the idea that it's the same sound, but actually they're not related at all. To put it really, really short, the U is the same sound that you have in English when you start saying a W, like for example in what, right? You have this W, and then your mouth explodes in English, like right, like wah. And the Norwegian U is just this start without the explosion. Yeah, it's just a and that's it. The Ö is a sound that doesn't exist in the English language. It exists in French, like bleu, or in German, like the Austria, the country Österreich. It's exactly the same sound. So if you haven't learned German or French, then it's a bit difficult maybe. Basically, I think the best way to get there is to say an E, and then from the E where you smile and you have the mouth open like this, you form like really, really, really round lips like this, like you're whistling basically, and that gets you to the E. I have a video on my YouTube channel though, so you you are asking the question. You're not on the YouTube now, you're on Zoom, so I'm going to share the link for my YouTube channel here. You can check it out there. Um, okay, let's see. In YouTube, Julia, what is dating like in Norway? Are they all really shy? Yes, I would say, well, all is always a bit difficult, but people in Norway tend to be really, really shy. That's true. On average, at least, of course. So what has become really popular, much more popular, I would say, than other countries, are dating apps where you can go and then match with people and then chat first before you meet them in real life. And for most people, that is a little bit that is a little bit yeah, less creepy, I would say, than just going to a cafe right away. So that's something that people don't really suggest very easily. But I would also say what is a bit funny is that people might suggest that you go on a mountain trip as a date. So they say, okay, there's this mountain here behind the village. Should we meet at the bus stop? And then we walk like 2 hours up the mountain, 2 hours down the mountain. So that's also quite common actually in Norway. That's something that people do. But in general, I would say people are a bit more reserved and it takes a bit more time. That doesn't mean they don't. Many people who come from abroad think that, yeah, these people don't like me. They don't want to have anything to do with me. No, they're just shy and it takes time to get a little bit, yeah, to open up a little bit. So what I'd recommend to you is to just give them this time if you want to date, or also if you just want to have friendships in Norway. Take your time to get in touch with people. Kyle is asking, what do you feel is the most important thing for beginners to keep in mind when starting to learn Norwegian? Unfortunately, I can't see any links in the chat, so I'm sending an email. Yeah, I have no clue why that doesn't work. I'm really sorry about that. Maybe I can manage to put them in the description afterwards. So there's always a technical problem here on YouTube, unfortunately. Anyway, what I would say the biggest problem I see, or the biggest disadvantage of most courses, is that they focus on exclusively on the grammar and way too little on the pronunciation. You are at a real advantage if you get the pronunciation right early on. And the grammar, you relax a little bit around it. Because if you make grammar mistakes, most grammar mistakes are quite easy to fix at a later point in your study. Pronunciation is harder to fix if you learned it wrong from the beginning. It's still possible. So if you did it, like if you started learning Norwegian without focusing on the pronunciation 10 years ago, and don't worry, you can fix it, but it takes more time and more energy. So focusing on the pronunciation early on is important. I try to do that also a lot in my courses. The other thing is that if you study grammar, make sure that you make a distinction between really studying it in a way that you can apply it, which is usually not so important, except for very few items that might lead to misunderstandings, or if you're reading about it so you understand how the language works. So on my website, I have this survival guide to basic Norwegian grammar. You might want to download it. It's free, and you can find it on, it has free materials, and then you can download it. So maybe that helps you at this level. Ion has a grammar question. When I'm saying something is my favorite in Norwegian, you say min favoritt. But when I say my mother, I say moren min. Is this just an exception? So how do we use the possessive pronouns like this min, me, mitt in Norwegian? We have two options. Either we put it before the noun the thing that we are owning, or afterwards. Yeah, so I can say min telefon, or I can say telefonen min. And they mean the same thing. They have exactly the same meaning. But the difference is that telefonen min, you can hear that the noun is in the definite form, and min telefon, it's not. Telefonen min is the one that is more common in spoken Norwegian. So most people would not say dette min telefon unless they want to stress it, like this is my telephone, not yours. Dette min telefon. That's what people would say, but they would not say something dette min telefon. Although it's not wrong technically. The thing with favoritt is that favoritt is always a prefix. So you would say dette min favoritttelefon, or you would say dette favorittelefonen min. Okay, so favoritt has to be combined with the noun that is like your favorite, whatever. Hope that explains the question. If not, please let me know. Okay, so then we have another question about hei versus nei. They sound almost the same. Yeah, they do. I mean, hei and hei, it's like the difference is so tiny that theoretically, Karen, nei has the first letter is an a, and in high, compared to hei, the first letter is an a, like a dark a. But in the stiff tongue, it's so similar that it really doesn't matter much. Again, maybe you can just let me know if that answered your question, or if I misunderstood what you were asking about. Okay, I guess did I overlook something on YouTube here? No. Yeah, feel free if if we're running out of questions, that's not a big deal either. Then we can end a bit earlier, but I have time until 7 o'clock, so 7 o'clock Norwegian time. So still a couple of minutes left. So if you have anything, also by the way, in the Zoom, I can even talk to you. So if you prefer to ask your question in speaking instead of writing it, then that works very well also. And otherwise, du kan også spørre på norsk, selvfølgelig. Jeg besvarer spørsmål bare på engelsk, stort sett, sånn at folk som nettopp har begynt med å lære seg norsk, også kan forstå hva jeg svarer. En venn av meg underviser i et stort afrikansk språk med få læringsressurser. Jeg visste om Mystery of Nils, og han ble imponert. Kan Scarpago akkurat nå støtte sjeldnere språk, eller ikke? Dette er et godt spørsmål. Jeg ville gjerne gjøre det, i hvert fall teoretisk. Men akkurat nå så har jeg ikke så veldig mye tid for det. Men hvis vennen din ønsker å komme i kontakt med meg og kanskje har en idé om ja, en slik bok eller et slikt kurs, kanskje vi kan komme på noe. Okay, so yeah, that was a bit maybe a personal question that about if I'm ready to publish material for rare languages or rarer languages. Theoretically, that's possible, but the problem is always time, unfortunately. I'm a bit overwhelmed with time sometimes. Cool. What else do we have? Great explanations on possessives. Okay, cool. Andy says, I have discovered nice best spoken breathing in. No, I don't know. That's a bit of an odd theory, but okay. Forskjellig versus annerledes. Okay, what's the difference between these two? I would say annerledes means you're doing it in a different way. So for example, you have an experience and I don't know, you were invited to a party and then you were invited to the same party the next year, but it was the experience had changed. So you would say then det var annerledes. It was different, maybe different from what I expected or different from what I was used to. Whereas forskjellig is when there is a clear, more technical difference. So if I have like two different phones and they look the same, but then I say nei, de er forskjellige because this one has, I don't know, it has a better camera than the other one or something like that, where there is a more of a technical difference, objective difference, then I would use forskjellig. By the way, if you have these kind of questions where you have like two words that mean almost the same, and you're not really sure, I always recommend to look it up in the Norwegian dictionaries. So you have the NAOP, the Norske Akademis ordbok, and I can put that in the chat here. Well, I guess not on YouTube. Maybe I can just cheat a little bit and put it on the screen here. You have naop.no, and then you have a second one, which is bokmålsordboka, ordbøkene.no. Let me just quickly share this. Okay, and I'll share my screen so you guys can see it. Here, that's the links for these two. Might want to write them down maybe or save them somewhere if you get them in Zoom. Because in these two you have definitions in Norwegian and you have also a lot of examples. So sometimes it's difficult because the same word or two words translate the same to English, but the meaning is not exactly the same. And then you don't really know how to use it. So when you're at a slightly advanced level, intermediate advanced level, I suggest that you always look up in the dictionary, that you always check in the dictionary whether you want to, what is the exact difference in meaning. Yeah, I hope that's a bit helpful. Okay, let me see what else we have on YouTube. I was taught that you is used when answering a question in the negative, but in Norwegian conversations that I listen to, it comes up even when it's not a question. Well, we have two meanings for you. One of them is, as you say, answering a negative question, like, har du ikke tid I morgen? Aren't you available tomorrow? And I say, you, like, yes, I am, I can come. But the other thing is that it's a so-called particle. So these small words, I always say, that give a little bit of a color to the sentence. And then you means something like, it doesn't really have a meaning. It more gives a different tone. It expresses surprise. For example, if you say, det var en god idé, that was a good idea, right? And you say, det var jo en god idé. It's like, oh, I didn't expect, like it can even be a little bit of an insult. I didn't expect you to come up with such a good idea. And det var jo en god idé. You're a bit surprised that this good idea came up. Det var jo en overraskelse. That was a surprise, for example. Yeah, that you would just put it into the sentence, and it has absolutely not the same meaning as when you're answering a question. It just gives this different tone to um, the sentence, and it can also mean something like, as you know. Han var jo i Oslo. Yeah, he was in Oslo, as you know. I told you before, right? Something like that. So these two meanings can be there additionally. That's a bit the challenge when you get to a higher level in the language, that you have these small little words that you cannot really translate very well to other languages, and you have to figure out what is the exact meaning of them. And it's not really possible to just go to the dictionary and look it up. But again, maybe you would find it in the you would definitely find it in the Norske Akademis ordbok, and you would also find it in the Bokmåls ordbok, ordbøkene. And by the way, these dictionaries also, they're quite good showing you the all the grammatical forms. So if you have a noun, it will show you the gender, it will show you the plural. If it's a verb, it will show you all the forms, it will show you the past tense and everything. So that's quite cool also to have, because sometimes it's just difficult to know, or you just don't have that information in your textbook or in your course, or you want to look up something. And so yeah, so when you're on an advanced level, I would definitely recommend that you take some time to check out these dictionaries, bookmark them on your website, and you can use them as often as you want. By the way, when it comes to the language cafes, just because somebody mentioned it before, we're going most likely to run them through the entire summer. So if you don't have so many opportunities to practice your spoken Norwegian, you're very welcome to come there. And if you don't know how to join them, and especially on YouTube, I guess it's not possible to share the link there. Then just send me an email. I'm going to put in the email address here one more time so people on YouTube can see it also. It's info@skapago.eu. Feel free to send me an email, and I'm going to send you the link. I'm sorry that this doesn't work. I don't know why YouTube doesn't allow me to post a link in the chat. Maybe they want to force everybody to stay on YouTube and not click somewhere else. That is, of course, possible, but unfortunately, it doesn't work in a different way. Cool. Are there any more questions? We still have a couple minutes left. Be it something about, as I said, we have a lot of particular questions here on grammar and these kind of things, but maybe you feel stuck somewhere, you don't know how to keep studying, or you have a pronunciation problem that we could deal with here. Let me know. Hva syns du om den nye populariteten til norsk litteratur utenfor Norge, Knausgård, Fosse og så videre? Noen av hipstervennene mine i USA vil lære seg norsk nå. Veldig merkelig. Jeg synes det er flott at folk ønsker å lære seg norsk for å lese norsk litteratur. Altså, det er en god grunn til å lære seg et språk for å kunne lese litteraturen, originalspråket. Jeg synes det er veldig flott, egentlig. Norsk litteratur har egentlig alltid vært mer populær i utlandet enn i Norge. Og grunnen til det er nok at Norge er et veldig lite land, så de fleste forfatterne tjener mest på utenlandske oversettelser. Men likevel er Norge også et land med mange forfattere. Altså det er mange flere bokpublikasjoner per innbyggere i Norge enn i andre land. Så ja, det er kaldt, det regner, det snør, folk sitter hjemme og leser. Det er bare sånn det går. Så ja, det er interessant. Jeg er ikke like glad i de forfatterne du nevner. Fosse er ikke som, ja, altså jeg liker ikke Fosse så veldig godt, men Knausgård synes jeg er en interessant forfatter. Jeg har lest ganske mye av ham. Ja, men norsk litteratur er veldig rik. Det er veldig mange forskjellige typer bøker som blir publisert hele tida. Så det er veldig interessant egentlig å kunne lese noe på norsk. Kanskje du vil skrive, Soterios, hva du liker å lese på norsk, eller om du har lest norske bøker før? Det hadde vært interessant. Yeah, I got a question about Norwegian literature here that is gaining popularity, especially in the US amongst hipster friends to Soterios. It's true that Norwegian literature has always been quite popular and is gaining a bit more popularity recently even. Of course, Norway has always been a very literary country with a lot of publications, and a lot of publications also in different genres. And since it's a small country, Norwegian publishers and authors always earn more on or not always, but much of the time they earn more on translations in foreign languages than in the Norwegian version. But generally, I was saying, for those of you who have not come so far, I believe that being able to read something in another language and in the original language is one of the most rewarding experiences of language learning. It's quite cool to be able to do that. And sometimes literature is not translated. Like one of my favorite Norwegian books, Kranes Konditori, written by Cora Sandel, it's not translated. I think there's a French translation and that's it. So if you want to read it, you have to read it in Norwegian. There is no English translation. So sometimes there are some like pearls out there that you cannot find in another language, and then it's quite cool if you can understand the original. And there are always nuances also lost in translations. So you have this, just as an example, you have Jonas by Jens Bjørneboe, which is about the Norwegian language struggle, like this time of the 1950s when there was a big fight between reforming the language or keeping bokmål and nynorsk as it was. And all of that is lost when you translate it. So it's really, really difficult. You can read it in English, but it's boring. You don't understand. What what it means. Can I be your social media friend, your Instagram name? It's very easy. It's Vanas Kalla, just my name in one word. Feel free to follow me. I'd like to come to study my master's in Norway, just in terms of quality of life and social interactions. Which is better, in your opinion, between Oslo and Bergen? Bergen is the more beautiful city. Bergen is the cozier and closer to nature and more Norwegian, if you want. And I would say there is more culture in Bergen. But it's less international and the weather is not as nice. Like in Bergen in the summer you have 15 degrees and rain, and in the winter you have 5 degrees and rain. So from that point of view, the quality of life in Bergen is not really great. But when it comes to cultural life, and when it comes to nature, I would say it's definitely more interesting to live in Bergen than to live in Oslo. Okay, we still have 2 minutes. I guess 1 or 2 more questions. Feel free to type something, and then I can see if there is anything more I can tell you, and otherwise we can wrap it up here, and you can keep enjoying the summer or keep studying Norwegian, or maybe both. There's nothing wrong with that. Monit Lang, is the Norwegian school is your Instagram name? No, it's not my Instagram name. It's my real name, like Vanas Kalla, or Skapago, my company name. Skapago is also on on Instagram. If you like, if you cannot see the information on YouTube, I told you many times, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Feel free to send me an email. Also, if there's a question that comes up afterwards, feel free to just send me an email. It's info@scarpago.eu. So if there's anything, any link you missed, any question that comes up later, anything I said but forgot to type in the chat, feel free to just send me an email afterwards. And yeah, I guess that's basically most important things. I hope I covered everything that we had here. Oh, one more question here. Some traditional Norwegian food you enjoy, not tacos or pizza. Actually, I like brunost, like the caramelized cheese, but it took me a while. At the beginning, it was really weird. And then when I ate it a couple of times, then I started liking it actually. Yeah. Okay, cool. But yeah, otherwise, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Feel free to text me. Enjoy your summer and have fun